Hey guys, it's Maddie, and today I'll be doing the 2016 reading survey. I came across this tag or survey on BookTube, and I wasn't originally going to do it because they already did a 2016 wrap-up, and some of these questions are already covered in that wrap-up, but some of the questions I didn't cover in that wrap-up, so I thought it'd be fun to look back on what I accomplished in my reading for 2016. So yeah, I'm excited to do this tag or survey, I guess. So let's just get started. So the first question is, how many books did you read and did you meet your reading goal? I read 43 books in 2016, and my Goodreads goal for the year was to read 30 books, so I definitely succeeded in that goal. So I'm super happy about that. I was so close to 50 books, so close. But I'm so happy that I read 43 books. That is a lot of books for me, considering that I've never read that many books in a year before. And yeah, I'm just super excited that I hit that goal, and hopefully in the year 2017 I'll be able to read even more books. What is your most read genre? So my most read genre is fantasy, which kind of surprised me because before I had not really been a fantasy reader, but I ended up reading a lot of fantasy books this year. It like outweighed the contemporary books, which I'm mostly a contemporary book reader, so I'm just really surprised that I read more fantasy books than contemporary books. That was like a huge shocker. But I read a lot of good fantasy books this year, so I'm happy with that number. I'm happy that I kind of diversified my reading since I usually read a lot of contemporary books. I'm happy that the number of fantasy books is greater than the number of contemporary books. So that is really good, and I'm looking forward to read even more fantasy books in 2017 because I have a lot of fantasy books on my TBR. I'd just like to give a quick mention that I've never held a coffee cup in a video before, and I always see a lot of YouTubers with their coffee cups looking like all prestigious. So yeah, it's good coffee. It's kind of cold now though, but yeah, it's good. Now I'm getting off topic. The next question is, what is your longest and shortest books you read in 2016? So the longest book I read last year was Another by Yukito Ayatsuchi. This book is, I believe, like over 700 pages. I think it's like 720 or something like that. I don't know if I really count it as the longest book I read because it's a manga, and it's like manga is so easy to read, so it doesn't feel like you're reading a huge book, but it technically is the longest book I read this year, so yeah. And it was a pretty good book. I gave it 4 stars, so it wasn't like amazing, but I really love this manga. I love the anime more though. The anime is so good. I really urge you to watch the anime. Even though it is horror, so if you're like not into horror then and you're like scared by it, I wouldn't recommend to, and I also wouldn't recommend people under the age of 18 to read this manga or watch the anime because it's super gory, but I really enjoyed this manga. And the shortest book I read this year is a tie between 2 books. They were exactly the same length with 192 pages, which is kind of funny. So I have I Am Pushing the Cat and It's Not You, It's Me. These both came to a total of 192 pages, so it was a tie. These were the shortest books I read this year. This one is more of like a graphic novel, so it's like I read this in like 10 minutes because it's so short and it has pictures, like cute pictures. I am obsessed with Pushing the Cat, so I really enjoyed this book. And this one was like a 3-star read for me. It wasn't like amazing, but it was okay. And it was really short, so I flew through it quickly. What is your favorite book published in 2016? This one was so easy. My favorite book published last year was P.S. I Like You by Casey West. I love this book. This was my favorite contemporary romance read of 2016 because it was so cute, and I definitely will reread it again someday, and I want to read more of Casey West's books because this one I just fell in love with, and I'd really recommend it. The next question is your favorite debut book of 2016. This is going to sound so bad, but I didn't read any debut books in 2016, which is kind of unfortunate because I love reading new authors who like just put out a book, their first book in the year it was published, but I just didn't get around to reading any debut authors of last year, so I'm gonna have to change that this year because that is like really bad. it's really important to read books by new authors, so definitely going to try to change that this year. The next question is your favorite book not published this year, and this one was also a no-brainer. My favorite book not published in 2016 was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is my favorite book of 2016, so this one was really easy. I love this book so much. I know this is a book people either love or hate because it's not a very original story, but I look past that because I'm just so in love with this story. I love the characters, I love the plot, I love the concept. It was just such a great book. And I'm looking forward to continuing on with this series. The third book, King's Cage, comes out next month, so I'm looking forward to reading the third book and continuing on because I really love this series. The next question is a book that lived up to the hype. I chose This Savage Song for this question by Victoria Schwab. I felt like this book really did live up to the hype. This book was really hyped up last year and I really ended up enjoying it. I think the story is so original and I love the concept of like when an act of violence occurs that gives birth to a certain monster. It's just such a cool world. This book has the most fascinating world I've ever read about. So I really love this book. It definitely lived up to the hype and I'd really recommend it. Next question is a book that did not live up to the hype. This one really hurts because this is such a well-loved book, but I have to say that Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas didn't live up to the hype for me. It's not that I hated the book, I did enjoy it, but I just didn't love it as much as other people seem to because this book is like a book that everyone is always so hyped about, like everyone loves it. I just liked it. So it wasn't that it was horrible, it just wasn't amazing like other people make it out to be. But in all, it was still a great book. The next question is a book that felt like the biggest accomplishment, and I have to say that A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas really felt like a big accomplishment just because this book is so big. It's like almost like 700 pages, and the fact that I read the whole thing really was an accomplishment for me, but I had to read the whole thing because it was so good. I really, really loved this book. It was one of my favorite books of last year, and I'll literally read anything Sarah J. Maas puts out because it's just like, this book was just so great. This is one of my favorite series, and I've heard that the rest of the books are going to be just as big as this one, but I don't even mind because like I just don't want this series to end, so I don't really care how long they are. They're just so great. Next question is, what is your favorite character of 2016? I have to say that Rhysand from the ACOTAR series is my favorite character of last year, which is really weird to say because I really didn't like him in ACOTAR, but in Akamov he's just like so amazing and great, and my like feelings for him completely did a whole 180. Like, he was just so great in this book, and the fact that we got to see more of him I think really impacted my feelings toward him and how my feelings changed toward him. He's just such a great character. He's so snarky, but that's why I love him, so I can't wait to read more about him in this series. He was just amazing. Next question is, what is your least favorite character of 2016? I don't have a least favorite character as much, like, no, I really don't. I don't dislike characters very often, and I couldn't find any characters that I really hated from last year, so I don't really have an answer to this question. Next question is, what is your most shocking book of last year? And this one was easy. I chose Choker by Elizabeth Woods. I have been talking about this book for all of pretty much last year. I loved this book. It was a mind-blowing book that just like had me going like, what just happened? It was so great. The ending was amazing. I really encourage you to pick up this book because this book is just not what it seems. It seems like a contemporary book, which it is, but it is also just this mind-blowing, like thrilling book. You just have to read it and go into it not really knowing what it is about because it makes the story funner that way. And I swear this book will leave you mind blown because it certainly did for me. The next question is, what is your favorite OTP of last year? And I have to go with Andy and Clark from The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This couple was so cute. I specifically love Clark because he's a very awkward guy, but that's what I like about him. He's just really unique, and he's such a nerd, and he's a writer, and I really loved Andy's relationship with him and how they came together and how they grew together. They were just such a cute couple. They're definitely one of my favorite couples I've ever read about. They were just adorable, and I love this book as a whole. It was one of my favorite contemporary books of last year. If I hadn't read P.S. I Like You, this would be my favorite contemporary book of last year. It was just so great. The next question is, what is the best written book you read last year? I have to say that The Winner's Curse by Marie Rutatsky was the best written book I read in 2016. I thought the writing in this book was so well done, and Marie Rutatsky just has a way of writing that it just flows so beautifully. And it's easy to understand, and it has this kind of poetic element to it. It was just so pretty. I hadn't expected going into this book for the writing to be so good, but it really, really was. And I can't wait to continue with the series and fall back into the writing style because it was just great. The next question is, what book did you push people to read the most last year? And I'm pretty sure I pushed a lot of people to read Avatar, A Court of Thorns and Roses last year because I absolutely loved it. I pushed my mom to read it, so she has it right now, and I don't know if she's finished it yet. I'm pretty sure she would have told me if she finished it, but she has it right now. I pushed her to read it, and I push everyone to read this series because it is so great. And I personally love the first book. I know a lot of people don't, but I still push people to read this series because I feel like this series just gets better and better because A Court of Mist and Fury was so good. So I'm still probably going to push people to read this series, honestly. I highly recommend it. The next question is, what is your favorite book cover of the year? This one was hard because there was a lot of good books published in 2016 that had amazing, beautiful book covers. But I went with Our Chemical Hearts by Crystal Sutherland. I've mentioned a lot of times now how much I love this book cover because it kind of looks 3D-ish with the fish. It looks like they're popping out of the page, and that's why I love it so much, and I think it's just stunning. And I really picked this book up because of the cover, because it's such a unique cover, and it just really caught my eye. And I'm really looking forward to reading this book. I don't really know a lot of what it's about. I just got it because of the cover. So this was definitely a cover buy. The next question is, what is your favorite adaptation of 2016? I had to say that Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children was my favorite adaptation of last year. I saw 4 movie adaptations last year. Some of them were released in previous years and some of them were released in 2016, but I really love this adaptation. I think it stayed pretty true to the book. There were some changes, of course, but it did live up to the book, and some of the story points in this movie were the same as the plot in the book. So I really appreciated that. I think the movie was well done. I'm not sure if the rest of the trilogy will be made into movies. I'm kind of hoping they will because I love this series and I'd love to see more movies from this series because the first one was done so well. The next question is, what book made you cry the most? And I went with My Heart and Other Black Holes by Jasmine Wanga. Specifically, the ending really made me cry, but they weren't sad tears, they were actually happy tears, so that was kind of different. This book just left me in such an emotional state after I read it. I think the message of it was so great. I really enjoyed the ending. It was a satisfying ending, and the ending was just so beautiful and it really made me cry. So this is probably the #1 book that made me cry in 2016. The next question is, what book made you laugh the most? And My Lady Jane definitely made me laugh the most. This book was surprisingly funny. I didn't realize going into it that it would be so funny, but I did find myself laughing throughout this book. The situations that happen in this book are so ridiculous, but that's what makes them funny. So this book is a really good book to go into if you're wanting a good laugh, because it does have some serious moments in it, but in the most part it is just so funny and just enjoyable, and it makes you happy. It's just such a good story that I Really recommend, especially if you're into historical fiction books. The next question is a new favorite author you discovered this year, and I have to go with Casey West. I read her book, P.S. I Like You, and this is the only book I've read by her. And I've mentioned before that I really want to read more books by her, and I want to read probably all her books this year because I really enjoy the story. I really liked her writing style, and I'm really excited to get into the rest of her books this year because I've been like craving more of her books because I really love this one. The next question is, what is your favorite guilty pleasure read of the year? I decided to go with A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas because this book is problematic, but I still enjoyed it. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of a guilty pleasure, but I'm okay with that because I love this series so much. In fact, the first book was a guilty pleasure too because this whole series has a lot of problems in it, but I still love it and I can't deny that I really enjoyed this series. The next question is, what is your favorite book you reread this year? And I have to go with A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm mentioning ACOTAR a lot in this video, I just realized that. But this was my favorite book I reread last year. I knew going into it again that I was going to love it, and I did, and I'll probably reread this book like hundreds of times. And I'm actually planning to reread the first two books again in preparation for the third book coming out, so I'm going to reread it again this year. And I'm looking forward to that because I'm excited to get back into it for a third time. And the last question is, were you happy with your reading year? What will you do different in 2017? I was happy with my reading last year because I did reach my goal to read 30 books in 2016, which was a huge accomplishment. And I felt like I read mostly books that I did enjoy. I didn't have any 1-star reads. I had 2 2-star reads, I believe, and I didn't have many 3-star reads either. So for the majority of the books I read in 2016, I loved them all. So I did feel like I had a really good reading year last year. I did get a late start in reading though. I started reading again in May because I was in a reading slump from January to April. So that part of my reading year wasn't good, but the rest was great. I read a ton of great books and I met my Goodreads goal, so that is awesome. And things I'll be doing different in regards to reading in 2017. I do want to read 50 books this year instead of 30 books, so I'm hoping I'll reach that goal. And I want to read more diverse books because I feel like I don't read enough diverse books. And I also want to finish and catch up on series I've started because I really need to finish some series that I have started because my to be read finished series are really piling up, so I definitely want to accomplish that too. And those are all the questions for this reading survey. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos, and I'll be back really soon.